like in Seattle, Washington? I know you're wondering that right now, and I've got just the guy to tell you. What's the forecast for Seattle, Washington today?
It's a little cloudy today, and it's not even going to be over 70, so it's a bit cool for our normal June.
Wow. Nick Norman is on the line with us. We didn't call Nick for the weather forecast, but we figured let's make him work twice as hard here this morning. Our conversation with Nick brought to you by Marcus and Mack, a law firm representing injured people. Nick is a therapist, a speaker, and educator from Seattle with all kinds of experience in mental health care. We had our own Dr. Ralph May on the air with us just the other day. We were talking about mental health for caregivers of people with Alzheimer's and dementia. And Nick, that sort of plays into what we want to talk with you about today, and that is something called, and I like the term, compassion fatigue. We know that there are people out there with great big hearts that want to reach out to people, but we know as well that there are many, many stresses on those lives, and especially in today's day and age. What is compassion fatigue?
Yeah, great question. This is typically a term that is reserved for frontline emergency workers. So, your firemen, your EMTs. But it's an emotional and physical exhaustion from being engaged with people in crisis on such a constant basis. It's, and it comes across as, having diminished emotions, a harder time feeling empathy or compassion, more impatience, feelings of burnout, and just plain old emotional shutdown.
Boy. Talk about America in 2022, huh?
Absolutely, absolutely. And, and even though it's normally something for frontline emergency workers, more and more this is being applied to the rest of us as well.
All right, so let's talk about some of the causes, some of the ways that we might notice it as well, and notice it within our own selves. So we think about the war in Ukraine. That's certainly something that is a worldwide stress. Here in this country, the price of gas, the resultant rises in prices for every good that you walk into a store, and if there is something on the shelves, then there's a good chance it's a lot more expensive than it used to be. The various stresses politically and all about the world, and with all of that, there are people suffering in many, many different ways. What are some of the signs that we're going to see that we ourselves might have a bit of compassion fatigue?
It's going to come across as a feeling of exhaustion overall. You may catch yourself more impatient or snapping at people a little bit more. We may be a little more likely to cut someone off in traffic or to get angry at somebody in customer service. But when we see ourselves feeling that impatience, feeling that baseline stressor in our life all day long, that's when we have to take a step back and evaluate what's happening. Because you're right, it's been a very difficult couple of years for our country, for the world. People have a lot going on in their personal lives, and then, we have this tendency to hop online and be bombarded by all of the difficult, terrible things happening in the world around us. And we just don't have the capacity for that. We really do have to recognize when we're taking too much on, when we're letting too much into our mental and emotional space, and do things to give ourselves a little bit of a break.
And it's interesting you bring up the aspect of online and social media and those sorts of things, because there is no shortage of people out there who will find whatever excuse they can to be snarky or critical of you, and that can really bear down on you if you let it, right?
Absolutely. I mean, that's why, when I can help it, I never read the comment section. Because it's, when people can be out there with a keyboard and no accountability for what they're saying, they tend to be a lot meaner. And, and so we need to create some healthy boundaries there, set some rules of what you will and won't look at, or how long you'll be on the news sites, or how long you'll keep scrolling Facebook, because it all builds up over time, and I think that's why we are feeling even more stressed than normal, is because we're constantly being bombarded with all these images and all these stressful things happening out in the world.
Nick Norman is our guest this morning here on Indiana in the Morning. Nick, I'm guessing that with the pandemic creating a lot more people who are on their own and maybe isolated from others, that exacerbates the problem as well.
Absolutely. Isolation is one of the biggest contributors to feelings of depression, and it's a double-edged sword, because it leads you to isolating yourself even more. And so, now that things are lifting a bit and we can get back out in the world, we need to put the phones down and go find the people that we've missed out on for the last couple of years. Go find those folks that we can be ourselves with and connect with and be emotionally vulnerable with, because we need that emotional support right now.
One of the interesting things to me about it is that I find it can be a generational thing. And when you mix generations, young people getting together with older folks and vice versa, old people seeking out younger people, that sort of a dynamic actually works as one of the pathways out of this sort of malaise in which we find ourselves.
Oh, definitely. And part of that is because of something we call perspective taking. You have to, converse with somebody who has a different experience from you, who may be in a different part of society from you. And, when we take the time to let our guard down and connect with people who may be just a bit different from us, we can gain a lot. People who have different experiences and have been through different times of this country's history can have a lot to share with us about how to move forward.
What are some of the other steps we might look forward to or we might seek out in order to work our way through these very difficult problems?
Beautiful question. First off is recognize it when it's happening and be willing to take a break from media, from whatever it may take. But focus on the things you can actually control in your life, the things you actually have the ability to influence, because, those are the things and those are the people that really matter. Take some time to give that compassion to yourself first, because you can't pour out of an empty cup. So you have to take care of your own needs first. And then get outside, go for a walk, get out in nature, move your body. Those are the things that our body is built to do. They help stimulate good mental health and they allow us the mental space to process what we're going through instead of being constantly overloaded by new information.
One of the things that I find in talking with my church congregation as well is that we find we feel so much better when our focus is not inward but outward, when we're looking at the needs of other people or just the ways that other people might benefit from our being compassionate toward them. And so I know we talk about compassion fatigue, but there's always that opportunity to give that's actually going to energize us, isn't there?
Oh, absolutely. And, and the key piece here is that we're talking about our immediate communities. These are people we can actually sit across the table from and we can connect with. And we have the opportunity to get vulnerable with them. That's the type of compassion that re-energizes everybody. It's that compassion that leads to greater connection and greater emotional healing.
We're talking with Nick Norman today. Nick is a therapist, speaker, and an educator from Seattle, Washington. And Nick, I know that you probably meet with a number of different groups or individuals in different settings where you might find an approach that works with one group doesn't necessarily work with another group, or maybe with a different individual. Really, it's a personalized thing, isn't it?
Yeah, it definitely is. And at the end of the day, there are certain fundamentals about how our bodies are built, how our minds operate, that if we pay attention to those and get those pieces in place, things like our physical health, exercise, eating good living foods, those things will give us a good baseline. And then, and then we have to do a little bit of personal searching of where things might be off for me. What am I missing right now? What's the emotion beneath the emotion I'm feeling? And when we take that time to get quiet with ourselves, identify what we may need, then we can actually meet those needs. And it just gives us so much more that we can give back to other people.
Tell me about the last couple of years, you personally, the work that you do with folks to help them to address these sorts of issues. I know that you meet as individuals as a therapist, but you get out into the community and you work with groups and other organizations too? Yeah.
I work with another organization pretty consistently here who has a good number of clinical therapists, and and I've been working with them for a number of years. But we saw a big shift when lockdown happened in early 2020. The requests for services for help with depression and anxiety, they went through the roof, and they just haven't gone And part of that is because, of the isolation that you mentioned before, but it's also because a lot of the traditional things we leaned on during difficult times were taken away for a while. And, we now are emerging back into, some semblance of normal, but it's a different world than the one we left. And so it's going to take us some time to get our footing again. And that's why it is really important for us to give ourselves that space we need to meet our needs first.
Yeah, I think one of the interesting aspects of it all, as well as we talk with Dr. May here in Indiana, Pennsylvania, as well, quite often on mental health issues, and he's a big proponent of it as well, is that we tend to focus on a mental health situation and not make the connection between physical health and vice versa, that one can be very helpful toward the other.
Absolutely. And I think for too long we have viewed the body and the mind as separate, because the reality is that they're one and the same. The foods we eat have a direct impact on our neuropsychology and on our mental health. So if your diet is off, that could be one of the starting points of just trying to get things back on track, because the body, the brain, the mind, it's all the same organism.
Yeah. All right. So where are we going to learn more about you and what you do, Nick?
You can find me at my website. It's nicknorman, LICSW.com. And I've got an article up there on compassion fatigue. So if you're interested in reading more, then you can find me there.
Absolutely. Hey, thanks for spending some time with us this morning. It's been good.
Absolutely. Thank you very much.
Have a great day.
You too.
It is the voice of Indiana County, WCCS 101.1 FM and AM 1160.